Hey fantasy fans, welcome back. It's Dan here with Treebeard Book Reviews. As you guys have seen from the thumbnail, we're talking about my favorite books of all time. Let's get into it.
Thank you to my patrons for supporting the channel and making it the best it can be.
Welcome back. First thing I want to say before we get into this list is I want to give a big shout out to Matt's book reviews. He actually really kind of inspired this video because he did something very similar this past year in 2022 where he went through his top 100 books of all time, and that's really what I'm doing now. So kind of an inspiration from him because it's such an undertaking. It's such a big list, and he did a very good job of that. So if you watch my channel, check out Matt. There is a link below for his description. There's also another channel I watch. It's called the Dice Tower, and they are mainly a board game channel. And every year they do, many of the presenters on that channel, they do their top 100 board games of all time. And so this is kind of like in that vein as well. Like they also have little jingles like. The main presenter is Tom Vassell, and they have like a little song like Tom Vassell's Top 100 Games of All Time. So it's like something like that, kind of along the vein. In my series, I'm going to be just doing 20. So it's going to be over a series of weeks, probably 6 weeks. Maybe not back-to-back 6 weeks, but it'll be, in this video, we're going to be doing 100 to 81. We're going to try and run through them fairly quick. And then the next video will be then 80 to 61, 60 to 41, 40 to 21, and then we're going to do the top 20 in 2 separate videos. So it'll be 20 to 11 and then 10 to 1. So I'm pretty excited for this list. It took me a while to kind of sit down and look at all the books I've read and just compile this list. I think it's hard to rank any kind of book, and the ways I kind of approach ranking these series were, what would I reread first? What would I recommend? Maybe not recommend, but what book did I enjoy like just more? So let's start with number 100. All right, so I guess when I was looking at my Goodreads, I've read around. My Goodreads isn't fully up to date. I've got a few books in there that I probably haven't added to that list, but it's probably around like 350 books that I've read in the fantasy sci-fi genres. And so coming up with my top 100 was fairly difficult. It's just more trying to find the order. But number 100 is Dragonflight by Anne McCaffrey. This is a really good book. It's an old book now. It's a little bit dated. I reread it. Tried to reread it when Jonathan read it over in Words of Time, and it shows its age now. It's written back in the 70s. The language is a bit antiquated, but it's still a really good, mix of fantasy and sci-fi, because it is actually really a sci-fi series. Pern. So yeah, number 100 is Dragonflight. All right, kicking off at number 99 with one of my favorite authors of all time, and that is Terry Pratchett with Pyramids. This is you following the young prince of Jelly Baby Tepic, and he is taking over the crown of Jelly Baby, become the pharaoh. This is a fun book. Read this last year, and I really had a lot of good time with it. Like, it's a very simple book. It's probably not Terry's best book, but there's actually some Terry Pratchett books that didn't make it into my top 100. And maybe I'll talk about those in a later video, or maybe when we get to the end of this series, that some of the books that you won't ever see on this list. All right, one thing I want to say too is these are all the books I've read with up to end of 2022. None of these series are going to be, what I've read in 2023. And I think, again, this is going to be an annual thing where I update this every year in the new year. So I'm excited. Let's move on. All right, so 98 is Assassin's Apprentice. I read this at the end of 2021. Again, I didn't say I really enjoyed it, but I enjoyed it enough that I kept reading with the series and read Royal Assassin and Assassin's Quest. Obviously, you guys, if you watch my channel, you've seen my review of Assassin's Quest. It's not my favorite book, but Assassin's Apprentice is nice. It's a good coming-of-age story. Just getting to learn about Robin Hobb's character of Fitz and then get immersed in this world in the realm of the Elderlings. I think it's a great book, and I highly recommend you pick it up. All right, moving on. 97 is Wrath by John Gwynne. This is the last book in The Faithful and the Fallen. I just found this book fell a little flat near the end of the series for me. Wasn't the greatest ending, I thought, to a series. John Gwynne is a fantastic writer. He likes to take a lot of risks with his characters, not afraid to kill his characters. But I just felt the ending was a little bit anticlimactic, or it fell flat, and it wasn't the ending I was kind of expecting. And I feel like he does this world a better ending in a later book, and maybe that book will be on this list. We have John Gwynne again, back-to-back John Gwynne, as the 96 is A Time of Blood. This is part of his Of Blood and Bone series. It's a really good book, actually. Like, to say this is on my list in my top 100, and it's like, ranked 96, like, that's pretty high when I say I've read over 350 fantasy books, and it's this high on this list. So this is a good book. It really is where I start to finally get connected with these new characters, because with this series it's set I think about 120 years after the events of The Faithful and the Fallen, and so you're still trying to get used to these new characters you've been introduced to, and it's really in this book, A Time of Blood, where it kind of kicks off. I start to enjoy the new characters a bit more, and I felt a lot more invested in the series, and that's why it's higher than Wrath. Number 95 is Equal Rights by Terry Pratchett. This is it is the first book in the Witches series, not the recommended start. Everyone always recommends to start with Weird Sisters, but in this one you're just with Granny Weatherwax, and she is guiding the young wizard Escarina Smith. And which is unique about this book is Escarina is a female, and she wants to be a wizard. And just in the Discworld, you cannot be a wizard unless you're a male, and you have to be a witch. So it's really about breaking down boundaries on like your gender, and so I really like this book. It's a very short Discworld book. It's probably not prime Discworld. Discworld is still being developed at this stage by this book, but it's still a really good Discworld book, really good witches book. And it's actually higher than a few witches books for me. So I really like Equal Rights, and that's why it's number 95. All right, moving along. So 94 is another big series that I really like, and that is The Wheel of Time. And this is New Spring, the prequel novel. So this novel obviously is set a few years before the events of the full Wheel of Time or The Eye of the World. And it's a great story. It's a backstory on like Moraine and Lan, or characters you meet in the first book. And I always recommend for readers of The Wheel of Time, if you're going to read New Spring, read it after book 9, I would say, just because it's much more interesting than book 10, I find. So my number, I guess that is 94, is New Spring. All right, so again, moving on with Terry Pratchett, we have another Discworld book, and that is The Thief of Time. Is number 92. So this is a very interesting Discworld book, and its placement in the Discworld is very significant because I believe it comes right before Night Watch. So this causes the events to happen in Night Watch a little bit. They're connected in a certain way. This is a death book. I believe it's the last book in the Death series. And this is a really great book. There's a lot of like timey-wimey, wibbly-wobbly things going on. You get your main character of Susan. One of your main characters of Susan Stohillet back. I really like Susan. This is a good death book. Not the best death book, I would say. It might even actually be the weakest death book. No, that's not true. There is one I have a little bit lower than this that isn't going to be on the top 100. And if you've seen my review for it, you know what that book is. It's Soul Music. And Thief of Time is my number 93. 92. This is going to be a shocker for some people. And I think that is actually The Hero of Ages by Brandon Sanderson. Last book in the Mistborn series. This book is a good book, but I just didn't really love everything that kind of happened in it. Like, I'm not a big fan of, like, one character was just very whiny in this book. I mean, rightly so. He was very upset because a certain character that they were connected to had passed away in an earlier book. And then also, we have a POV with a character who I'm just not particularly interested in with the Hero of Ages. And the ending was good, but I just didn't really feel satisfied with the ending. I'm happy with the ending. Like, I can deal with it and live with it, and I have lived with it, obviously. But again, I don't think it's as great as like the first Mistborn entry was. Like, it's just, this book is like really, really doom and gloom. I like it. I like Hero of Ages. I have a leather-bound edition of Hero of Ages. It's a great book, and it's that's why it's number 92 on my list. Almost through the first 10 here, and that is Exile by R.A. Salvatore. This is the second book in the Dark Elf trilogy by R.A. Salvatore, and it's following the life of Drizzt Do'Urden. The first book being Homeland Exile. I find it was actually a great sequel to Homeland. Really kind of opened the Underdark a lot, and you get to meet some interesting other characters and some races within the Underdark. And he just did such a great, building out this world, this really dark world, and just giving a little bit more character to Drizzt. Drizzt is actually quite, like, sometimes seen as a boring character because he doesn't have an exceptionally large amount of personality, at least in these early books. And he's really kind of propped up by his companion characters in the series, like Guinevere and some of the characters you meet in this book, and I think they're absolutely fantastic, and that's why Exile is number 91. All right, this might even shock people too, that this book is higher than other books, and that is The Bands of Mourning by Brandon Sanderson. That is book 3, Era 2 of Mistborn. God, it's gonna be so hard to keep track of all these when he's at like era 9 in it'll probably be at era 9 in like 5 years, knowing Brandon Sanderson. But yeah, so it is book 3, era 2, Mistborn. I really liked it. It's just again, it's a really fun fantasy novel, and he really breaks open the magic system in this book. But you can tell with this series, the Mistborn series, like Era 2, that he didn't have a lot of direction, or he hadn't fully pieced it together where he wanted to go with it. But I still think it's fun. Like, what you learn is the Bands of Mourning is a really cool object and magical object. And it's just great to hear more and see more about it, and just Brandon taking risks with his magic system. So I really like Bands of Mourning, and that's why it's number 90. It's like, it seems like there's always a Discworld book like everywhere, and they're gonna be littered throughout this list. And so my number 89 is Eric. I recently read that I did my Novembeard buddy read with Eric and Sorcery. And Eric is actually a really underrated Discworld book, and I think this is what also happened with Pyramids for me, is that everyone told me, they're not the best Discworld books, you're gonna hate it, and maybe I went in with that kind of expectation that these aren't gonna be the greatest, and I won't really enjoy them, but then I ended up really enjoying them. So I thought Eric was a fun little play on the Faust. I think it's a Faustian tale. And I liked it. It's so much fun. Just there's demons going on, and there's time travel, and it's definitely worth the laughs. And it's so small. Like, I think I read it in an afternoon. So definitely pick up Eric, and that's why it's number 89. I can't this is a big list. Now thinking about it, but this has been a lot of fun to kind of go through these books I've read over the last few years and just kind of put them on this list, this matrix that I'm building. And number 88, and I didn't think this author would ever really be on this list for me, and that is Norse Mythology by Neil Gaiman. I read this last year. This was a lot of fun. Like, I've read the Poetic Eddas and the Prose Eddas, for a matter of fact, like when I was in university, just for classes, and I think he did a fantastic job just translating the works of the Poetic Eddas, where he took a more story tale version of them. Like, he made them like more digestible for like a modern audience, and added a bit of comedy. There is comedy in the Poetic Eddas, but it made the comedy more kind of punchy, and I really applaud Neil Gaiman for doing that, because I really appreciated these stories. They're a quick read, and also the book is absolutely gorgeous, if you see from the cover here. So that is number 88, Norse Mythology. So yeah, it seems like I have a lot of Brandon in this part of the list, the top the 80 through 100, and I actually have The Lost Metal on here. I guess going on again, it's Mistborn Era 2 book 4. And it's a good book. I like the way he ended the series. I think it is better than The Bands of Mourning. Obviously he really kind of starts to irk me in this one a bit with the pushiness of the comedy, and also just the he's really kind of breaking open the world with his Cosmere connections, and he's kind of like, saying the gloves are off, which is fine. I don't mind that, but it's just, I liked it when it was a bit more subtle, and I think all the characters in this era got the conclusions that they needed and they deserved. No real complaints on the book. If you want to see my full review, check out my review. But yeah, great story, Lost Metal, and kind of looking forward to seeing Era 3 now. Number 86 is Masquerade by Terry Pratchett. This one was a really good witches book. Like, if you like Phantom of the Opera, you're really gonna like this story. It's also different from all the traditional witches books up till now, like where you have, Witches Abroad, Lords and Ladies, Weird Sisters, where we meet a new witch, Agnes Nitt. And it's nice to have this new additional character, and she really adds a lot to the witches triumvirate, or the trio. And I think you'll enjoy this series. I really enjoyed it. I really love Masquerade. I love Phantom of the Opera. I'm a big sucker. I like the Gerard Butler Phantom of the Opera. I don't know who doesn't, but it gives you those phantom-y vibes, and it's a lot of fun. So that is why number 86 is Masquerade. All right, so number 85. This one, I had a hard time placing it because it's not really like a book you can just sit down and read and enjoy for the heck of it. You enjoy it for like the art of it, what it means to the overall universe that this book is set in, and that is The Silmarillion by J.R. Tolkien. I read this years ago, back in, I think, end of high school. I haven't come back to it and read it again just because I remember enjoying it that time I read it. I don't think I fully understood everything, but I remember enjoying it, and I don't really want to go back and reread it and ruin that enjoyment, because I might not like it as much now. Because it is not a serious undertaking. It's not a huge book, but it's not an easy read either. So yeah, Silmarillion, I think just for what it adds to the Tolkien universe, it adds so much. That's a lot of wealth. And it just fleshes out a lot of things. And if you love Tolkien, like, you need to read it, and you probably will have read it. But number 85 is The Silmarillion. So it seems like we've had a bit of a trend, I found, with this list, where the three authors, or the authors that are kind of cropping up, obviously, are Terry Pratchett, John Gwynne, and Brandon Sanderson. So we have another John Gwynne novel, and that is Malice. And so this is the first book in the Faithful and the Fallen series. It's a really nice book. It's a really enjoyable book. I think it would do better on a reread, or it's just, it's like with any series when you're starting out, you're trying to learn who the characters are, you're trying to get attached to them. And, just for this one, it took me a little bit longer to get attached to the main characters, but by the time, book 2 came around, I was fully invested. And, John Gwynne's a fantastic writer. I did this one on audiobook. The audio narration is good. You reading it is probably just as good because his chapters are so short and you just fly through them, and he's a really fast writer to read. And I really like Malice, so that's why it's number 84. All right, 3 more left before we get to the end here. So number 80, I guess it's 83 now, is Hyperion by Dan Simmons. This is a great Canterbury's Tales style story where you're following these pilgrims who are going to the Temple to Shrike, and they all are really different. They all have different narratives and tales to tell, but they're all really interconnected in some way. And some of them are very emotional. Some will make you cry. Some will make you angry. Some will, they make you feel a lot of emotions, and some of them are better than others. Like I'm really kind of more leaning towards like the Scholar's Tale or the Priest's Tale. Those two are my favorites. But wow, what a fantastic book, and I'm really glad I read it. And it's one of those books that I would highly recommend any fan of the sci-fi fantasy genre read. So that is number 83, Hyperion. Poor Brandon. Like, Brandon just can't escape the top 80 for me. But he's going to do well later. Like, he's got other books that are going to be on this list a little bit higher up. And so number 82 is Elantris for me. This is fun. I read Elantris. Actually, Elantris was the first book I ever reviewed on this channel. And it's good. Like, it's a good book. Like, 82 out of 300 is not bad for Brandon Sanderson. I like the magic system. I think with this book, I had a lot of false starts. Like, I think I tried this novel to start it twice. and then it was the third time where I finally actually finished it. So I really liked it. It's a lot of fun. I like the magic system that he develops in here. All of his magic systems are so unique, and you can see that this is Brandon's like first novel, and or first published novel, and so it's got a little rough around the edges. It's not perfect, but it's still well worth the read, and it's ripe with Cosmere connections that are coming in the future of the Cosmere. So it's great. So number 82 is Elantris. All right, 81. Wow, we got to the end, and hopefully in record time. So number 81, one of my favorite series of all time. Clearly one of my favorite books of all time because it's on this list, my top 100. But that is The Deathly Hallows by J.K. Rowling, Harry Potter. Great book, great ending to the series. I don't think it's as strong as some of the other books in the series, but I really like what she did with the ending here. I felt satisfied. I was happy with, maybe not happy with all the character deaths because they're heartbreaking, but I was happy with how the series ended. And yeah, it's a really good read, and it's going to be one of those books I read for the rest of my life, and I cannot wait to read it to my kids, or at least read the earlier novels to my kids and let them pick up and read the rest for themselves. So that's it, guys. Those are the top, the first 20 books on this list. So I hope to catch you again on the next one. We're going to be doing 80 through to 61, so stay tuned for that. I'm excited to continue with this series. It's been a lot of fun, also a lot of work, and a lot of trying to make my list make sense to me, and but I'm ready for the undertaking. That's it from me, guys. We'll see you on the next one. Have a great day. Cheers.